Hey guys, um, doing another video here. I'm going to talk about some resistances and how much do you need in raids as a Fury Prot tank. so, um, resistance is one of those things I feel like most people don't fully understand, um, but it's not a super complicated um, concept. So on Wowpedia, there's a couple different places you can find this information. Um, but resistance essentially works as an average. So we're not talking about PvP, but in PvP, mostly in PvP, I'll say, there's spells that have effects other than just damage. Frostbolt is probably the best example. Frostbolt has a snare that's attached to it. Those kinds of spells have different sorts of rolls with resistance, because if you resist the snare, you basically resist the frostbolt. But we're talking about rating as Fury Prot, so we're gonna focus on just this formula here. So this is the formula that is used in the game to determine your average resistance, and it ends up being an average because you can resist like if you're at the cap, if you're at, which the cap is 315, if you're at 315 fire resistance, for example, that's 75% average resistance. You're not going to resist 75% of every single spell that you get hit by. So you can see here it says pure damage spells can be resisted for 0, 25, 50, 75, or 100% of their regular damage. So when you're at 315, you could still resist 100%, but there's going to be times where you only resist 50 or even just 25 or even resist 0. It's going to be a very small chance, but pardon me, the average should work out to be right around 75%. There always has to be some RNG thrown in there when you're playing a role-playing game like this. So if we take this formula, we can figure out what our resistance will be. So it's a target's resistance, so your resistance level divided by the caster's level, which is a boss, which is going to be level 63. For this discussion, we're only concerned about bosses. Multiply that by 5, that's where you get the 315 from, and then multiply that by 0.75. So I have that formula here. So here's the formula. So your resistance divided by the boss's level times 5, which ends up being 315, which I already done that calculation there. And then you multiply that result by 0.75. So you can see at different, and I input these, myself. So 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. These are just levels of resistance, and then it caps at 315. So at 50 resistance against the boss, your average resistance, or you could basically consider this your spell mitigation, is right at 12%. At 100, it almost doubles to 24%. At 150, it goes up to almost 36%. At 200, it's 47%, and so on and so forth. So you can see, you can tell by looking at this that so going from 100 to 200, which is doubling your resistance, you're effectively doubling your resistance at your percentage mitigation at the same time. So there's really not a diminishing return until you get to 75%. Once you get to 75%, there really is no more there's no more gain. There's no more benefit to adding it. So if you're looking, and it depends on the fights you're looking at. I have some logs we're going to look at. Ragnaros is one. I have 2 different Fire Maul fights we're going to look at. We're going to look at the logs. And then I have a Saffron fight we're going to look at. So there are specific fights in the game where tanks should be wearing fire resist or frost resist. This Saffron parse or log that we look at, this is going to be as a DPS. The tank does not wear frost resist on Saffron, or they shouldn't. They shouldn't be. Ragnaros and Fire Maul are probably the 2 biggest examples of wearing resistance. I know that some folks wear nature resistance on Huhuran and on Viscidus, but it depends on how your guild. It depends on what your strategy is as a guild. So when we fight Huhuran or Viscidus, we don't wear nature resist at all. We use nature pots, and then we use EPRs, elixir of poison resistance, and a few other things that help mitigate the damage. Ragnaros can be done with 0 fire resist. Firemaw can be done with 0 fire resist. Sapphiron, if you have world buffs, it's still ideal to wear a little bit of resistance. And you can see, even just wearing 100 resistance will negate the damage by roughly 25%, that's pretty good. So even a little bit of resistance can be helpful. And if I know Horde have fire resist totems, and I think they also have nature resist and frost resist totems. And hunters also have nature resist aura or aspect or whatever. So let's look at Ragnaros. This was a fight from, these are relatively recent, so this is a fight from June 12th. I already went through my gear and added up what I was wearing, but we can look at it real quick. This is my typical Ragnaros set, so I have Dark Iron Helm with the 20 fire resist enchant on it, so that's 55. So you can see what just happened there. That's where I got 55 from the helm. Okay. Neck, I'm wearing the Onyxia Tooth Pendant, 10 fire resist. So I got 10 from the neck. So I go on down the line. That's all the fire resist. And then I had Pally Fire Aura. So I had about 223 fire resist on Ragnaros. And now let's go to, just to show you that I was indeed tanking him. So I am right here. So you see I had Parson 87, then I'm tanking. I think Arcanen was the other tank. And I tanked, it looks like, for most of the time. So this should be pretty good representation. So we're going to go to damage taken. Here's another way you can decide, is it worth it to put on fire resist or not, or any kind of resist. So his elemental fire, this is just the elemental portion of his melee attack. Wrath of Ragnaros and Lava Burst, you can see, did almost no damage. And I mitigated Lava Burst 55%. So even if I had no fire resist on, this does not do hardly any damage. And Wrath of Ragnaros does not do hardly any damage. You're trying to mitigate this elemental fire. And you can see he did, even with me wearing... So I was wearing 223 fire resist, so I should be right about this level. I should have been about 53% or 54% resistance. And you can see I was at 55% mitigated. Almost 56, 55 and a half, 55.6. So if I was at 0 fire resist, you could expect this damage taken per second to relatively double. So it'd be around 900. So it's possible to tank him without fire resist, but I would... This is where I like to be comfortable, is right around 200. If I didn't have the pally, it probably would be fine. If I dropped off the gloves and the neck, I'd probably be fine. But keeping the helm and the legs and probably the cloak, at the very least, like helm, legs, and then pally would be 175. So that'd be right at 40%. That would probably be okay too. And we killed him in 1:12, so it also depends on how long it takes to kill. But this is how you can see how effective your fire resist was, or your resistance gear, I should say. Some people talk about wearing fire resist on Gar, and I don't know why. So this same week, I'm pretty sure this is the week that he dropped Thunder Fury, his binding for me. But here's what I wore on Gar. So you can see I didn't wear any fire resist at all. None. And then I might have maybe had a pally buff, maybe. So I was fully world buffed, it looks like. I even had Rend. I don't see pally fire aura in here. Oh, I had Devo aura. So no, I had Devo aura up. So I had essentially 0 fire resist, or whatever Mark of the Wild gives you. 15 maybe. Look at damage taken. So I Goblin Sapper charged, I damaged myself, and I almost did as much damage as Immolate did to me. So I had a fire, it looks like I had a Fire Sworn on me, and even then the Fire Sworn meleeed me for more than it immolated me. So I don't really understand why people want to wear fire resist on Gar. Maybe if they're the ad tank, the immolates start stacking up, but those should be getting dispelled anyway. Things like elemental melee from Rag can't be dispelled, and the debuffs from Saffron and from Firemaw can't be dispelled either. So I would not ever wear fire resist on Gar. So I don't understand why that's a thing. But that's something you can do. Like if you're ever curious, like Baron Geddon. I did not tank him, I don't think. Pretty sure I did not tank him this week. Let me see. Oh, I did tank him. Okay, so we can look at that too. Sweet. So I parsed a 93. Let's filter by me. Damage taken. Oh, sorry. Let's go back to summary. So you see, same thing I wore on Gar. Same exact gear set. No fire resist at all. Let's check the buffs. Devotion aura again, and even then I didn't have it for the whole fight, it looks like, for some reason. It must have been out of range. So no fire resist. Now his melee attack is fire, but you can see even with no fire resist, it's only 600 damage taken per second. It's really not that bad. We killed him in 42 seconds. Usually he gets off 1 pulse or Inferno, and then he dies shortly after that. So if you're fighting him, if you're, not in the gear that we're in, obviously your fights are going to take longer. So if it's a 2 or 3 or 4 minute fight or whatever, wearing some fire resist would probably help. But I would just look and make sure that you're not gimping yourself because, and you could see I only mitigated 11%. Because you don't want to run your healers out of mana because they're doing nothing but, and you're not the only one taking damage on this fight. So that would be a consideration as well. But obviously you can tank him without fire resist, and it's not an issue. Looks like I resisted a few. Hit crushing blow, resisted critical, resisted hit. So I resisted a little bit of damage, but not a lot. As I only resisted 10%. So So that's about what we would expect, right? With all this resistance, I resisted. I actually got luckier, and I was a little bit higher, 55%. So now let's go look at my fire maul. I have 2 different fire mauls to look at because one of them I was fully world buffed, and I think I wanted to parse. Is that what happened this particular week? This was July 30th, so this was about a month ago. And I did not get a 99. I got a 98, which upset me, but whatever. Let's look at my gear. So again, I've already done this and gone through my gear. So I had the neck, the cloak, and the UBRS buff. So I've got Ani neck. Obviously, you need to have Ani cloak to survive Shadow Flame. And then I had the UBRS buff, which if you go to your buffs, it's not going to show you the right thing. But it's called Resist Fire, and I think it's 83 fire resist. And this doesn't show that I had a Pally's fire aura, but I'm 99% sure that I did. So I went ahead and added it in anyway. So I just put 80 for the UBRS buff. So actually for this week, I don't think I had a Pally. For the next one I did. So 121. So 121 puts us right about here, right about, let's say, 28% mitigation. And then let's look at damage taken. So Flame Buffet, miss, and then mitigated. So this one you just want to look at miss percentage because Flame Buffet just... it's not showing up. So it does damage, but it really, you want to combine these two. So it's 27.5%. and his uptime was 94%. So usually, come on. So usually you want the stacks to fall off, but we kill him. So we killed him in 41 seconds. Like, let's go back to damage done real quick. I knew a lot of look at how many warriors were in the high 90s parsing. Actually, I mean, you go all the way down, everybody parsed. I think I even said in yeah, look at this. There's one purple, so 2/3 of the DPS basically parsed orange or better for this fight, and this was a week ago. We killed him in 41 seconds. I could have had 0 fire resist except for the Oni cloak and probably been fine, because he only got, how many stacks did it say? So he cast Flame Buffet 11 times. So I had 8 stacks on me, because it says 94% uptime. Let's just assume that was 100%. 8 stacks is really not a big deal. I saw a Feral Druid one time take over a fight because the main tank died. He was one of the off tanks, and the Feral took over. I think he got to 33 stacks before he died, and he didn't have any fire resist on at all because he was planning on just being the taunt tank, the off tank. So, you know, this is not a big deal. I mean, we could even let's look at my health. So this is my health throughout the fight. So I got down to 63, 63, 50% here right after a Shadow Flame for 4K. I mean, I really did not come close to dying. Shadow Flame for almost another 4K. So yeah, I could have worn almost no fire resist and been fine. But again, the point of the video, 27.2, so 27.5% mitigation, and that's right about in line with what I had on. Now the next Fire Maw fight, I actually had a lot of fire resist on. This is how I used to, and this is again a quick fight. This was July 16th. This was kind of the fight where I decided going forward I'm going to wear less fire resist because I had melee on the damage meter, on the threat meter were chasing me, and I thought they were going to pass me up, so I wanted to wear more threat. So I got Dark Iron Helm, an Ixia Tooth Pendant, Dark Iron Leggings, Gauntlets of Might, the Cloak, and I'm pretty sure I had a Pally Aura, but maybe not. I don't see Pally Aura in here. I'm pretty sure I had it though, but I did have the UBRS buff for the whole fight again. So let's look at damage taken. So adding all that up, let's say, I'm pretty sure the Pally was there, but let's say not, 233. So we should have been right about in between these two, so probably 55%. And the miss percent was 75, so I'm pretty sure I had a Pally buff. Because I don't think, whoops, wrong one. So I was at 303, so 300 is right at 71.5%. Because there's no way that percentage would be that high. So really yeah, he cast it 16 times and only hit me 4 times with it. And then the times he did hit me with it, so I resisted 12. And the times he did hit me with it, it was pretty pitiful. Let's go back to damage done. Okay, this time the damage looks a lot different. So I know there's probably different people in here. But there was only one warrior that was pink, and then the rest were orange, which is still good. But, after this fight is when I said, going forward, I'm going to be wearing less fire resist so you guys can go bananas. And in part, it was because I came back and looked at this information and saw, I don't need to have that much fire resist on for a 43-second fight or 47-second fight or even a 60-second fight. I need to be pumping threat. So that's when I put this gear on for this week. And then even after that, I'm probably not going to wear Ani Tooth Pendant anymore, and I'm not going to wear. Um, you have to wear the cloak. So at the very minimum, you're going to have the cloak and the UBRS buff. So that's 115. And then let's say you get the Pally buff too. So I would have looked like this. So if I have the UBRS buff and the cloak, which the cloak is required, and a Pally buff, that's 181. That still puts me at 40%. It puts me a little bit higher. It puts me at like, I don't know, 42, 43, 44%. That's good enough. I really would even drop more. I would probably be closer down to the 100. You really don't even need fire resist if you're killing them this fast. Now again, same thing as Ragnaros. If you guys are taking 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you know, because you're progressing or because you're still in BWL gear or whatever the case may be, then yeah, you probably want to wear more fire resist. And also it depends on your DPS. If your DPS are not chasing you down, there's really no reason to increase your threat. You want to increase your survivability. But don't make a mistake. And, you know, as you get better gear, you go back and tank Fireball on the same stuff you tanked them in when you were progressing. That, you know, don't do that. You need to increase your threat. All right, now let's look at Saffron. So again, Saffron, I'm not tanking. The tank does not wear any. So Ortimus tanked it that week. This is from July 18th. This was about a month, roughly a month ago. I think that this raid in particular, I died and lost my buffs on an earlier boss. So then I normally do tank Saffron, but then this week I didn't. So if I'm not tanking, I won't wear this much frost resist, but I'm just going to show it for the example. You can see I did really crappy damage, but that's because, like I said, I didn't have my buffs. So you see there's no world buffs in here. I did have a Pally aura, but it was intermittent, so I'm not going to include that in the calculation. But then if you look at, like, say, like, let's look at Chill and see what he wore. So yeah, if you have ice, or excuse me, if you have world buffs, these guys wear a lot less frost resist than I'm wearing, because it just starts gimping your damage. Like, healers in our guild pretty much wear 0 frost resist. Only the melee and ranged DPS wear frost resist. The tank does not. The healers do not. So since I lost world buffs, I really stacked it on. So I have helm, chest, legs, gauntlet, or wrists, gloves. I didn't put the ring on. I normally have the ring on as well. And then cloak. So that came out to be 213. This does not include the Pally buff. So if you include the Pally buff, it's about 280, 285. So I'm at 213. So I'm right around the 50% mark. And if you look at my damage taken, Frost Aura, I'm actually did a little bit better than that. Probably because I did have the Pally buff for part of that. So let's just say, let's move this down. Let's say I had the Pally buff, and instead of 70, let's call it 40. So 253 would put me about 60%, and that's about what we saw. So I mitigated 57.6, and it would have been right about there. And then let's look at damage taken against the whole raid. I'm usually near the bottom. Yeah, I'm pretty close to the bottom. I didn't take as many. I usually only save a frost pot if I get into trouble, and that's why you see these absorbed. These are where they're taking frost pots, so they take less healing. And I never really got into a position. I did take one, I think, and I never really got into a position where I was close to dying. I pre-potted one, so usually you pre-pot one and then you take another one partway through, and I usually wait until, just in case the shit hits the fan, because I want to have that pot ready to use in case I need to use it to save a healer a couple extra seconds. But even without only using one, I'm still near the bottom of the list. And then obviously you see the tank. They take a lot of damage, but they don't wear frost resist at all, and you should not be wearing frost resist as a tank on this fight. Healers shouldn't be wearing it, neither should the tank. In DPS, if you have world buffs, they should only be using just sparing frost resist. I think we tell them to typically get around 125-ish is where we like them to be. Somewhere between 100 and 150. I think we say don't get more than 150. So if you have a paladin buff, that's 70 right there, so you can knock some out. So, and the reason I'm bringing this up as a discussion point is that I've seen the question before. I've seen a lot of folks talking about, so like even folks that want to tank Molten Core in our own guild, when we have tanks that are up and coming, or people that are Fury DPS, I say, hey, I'd like to tank Rag sometime. How much fire resist do I need? And I usually tell them, you really don't need a ton. Probably 200, and somewhere around there. And they kind of laugh like, oh yeah, okay, well, like I'm being serious. You probably only need to be right around 200. You don't. If you're at 315, first of all, getting fire resist. So getting frost resist is fairly easy, because if you look at the gear, so like my helm has 44 on it. The chest has 40. The legs have 40. The bracers have 20, which isn't great. Those gloves have 30. Just between the gloves and the bracers, I've got 50. So you compare that with the fire resist. You've got this is on Baron Geddon. Actually, let's just go to the Firemaw one. So Dark Iron Helm only has 35. Mine has 55 because I added the 20 fire resist enchant. So thankfully that enchant exists. Onyxia Tooth Pendant is only 10. Tier 1 gloves is only 7. That's like almost not worth even putting on. I think I put these on to help me out with the hit, because I had the Ring of the Dreadnought on. Dark Iron leggings have 30. So compare that to the Icy Scale. Like, these have 40. These have 10 more. Plus 10 you have a 10 frost resistant enchant. These have 50. So these have where'd it go? These have 50, but only because I have the 20 fire resistant enchant on there. And then the cloak has 16 plus a 15 fire resistant enchant, so 30. And this cloak has 24 plus, so this is basically the same. It's easier to stack other resistances than fire. Nature is a little harder to stack as well. But if you were to get the Dark Iron wrists and the Dark Iron, I think there's boots, you just start gimping your threat way too hard. My fire resist set, as you can see, pretty much consists of the helm and the legs and a Onyxia Scale Cloak, and that's about all I'll do. The Onyxia Tooth Pendant, I'm pretty much wearing that for the hit, and it also has crit on it, which is nice. Same thing with the Tier 1 gloves. If I had Goas, I would not be putting these on for the fire resist. I'm putting them on because I need the hit rating. So like 1% hit, 2% hit, 3% hit, 4% hit, 5% hit, 6% hit. So I'm even putting that ring on for the hit. So yeah, I'm putting that gear on because I need the hit. Because I lost my hit for my cloak. I don't have Kiss of the Spider yet, or DFT, which would be huge. I put this ring on instead of my other DPS ring because I wanted the 2-set bonus, and I'm increasing my stamina and defense by a little bit. Legs, my legs I usually wear are the Conquerors, which have hit on them. And then that's it. So like, yeah, if it wasn't for if the Onyxia Tooth Pendant and Tier 1 gloves didn't have hit on them, I wouldn't be wearing them. I'd be wearing something else that does have hit. So really, Dark Iron Helm and Dark Iron legs and an Onyxia Scale Cloak is enough. I mean, that's... Excuse me. So let's say 0 here, leg 0 here. So just the helm, the legs, the cloak, and a pally is 206. That's like right about 50%. It's really close. That's all really you need on any one of these fights. And I would say on Firemaw, so like I would suggest probably this being. I used to be, because there's other ways you can increase your resistance. There's a magic potion, magic resistance potion that increases by 25. There's some trinkets you can wear. So I used to wear. I don't think I wore it on either one of these two fights. No, I wore Black Hand's Breath and Slayers, and this one I wore Black Hand's Breath and Slayers, I think, yeah. So there's a trinket that has fire resist that you can buy off the auction house, and I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head. I used to use it, and then eventually I got rid of it. And then there's one that drops off of Lotheb that has 13 or 14 or 15 fire resist. It has basically resist all. Let's go find it. So it has 13 to basically resist all, and then your on use increases all resistances by 40. I used to use that on Firemaw. So basically, if you pop it right at the start of the fight, and then you could pop it. Let's say you get unlucky, you get 5 stacks right away. You don't resist any of the stacks. You could pop this, and then it would almost guarantee that you're going to drop your stacks off. So it's like this is 53 resistance. The problem is if you're already sitting, if you're already at 303. So let's say I put that trinket on, then the trinket adds another 13. So that's over cap. That's 1 over cap. So then when you pop the trinket, you're even further over the cap. So it really doesn't do anything for you. You'd have to drop something, take the legs off, or you'd have to drop something. You can't take the cloak off. You'd have to drop something else. And it just got to the point where it was just kind of feeling like a meme trinket, and it wasn't really helping me a ton, so I quit using it. I just used the helm and the legs. You could drop the legs off and put 2.5 legs on and get your hit back, and then use this trinket. So, there's really no reason. I mean, you kind of got to feel it out. Like, I'm at the point now where this even feels like too much fire resist on Ragnaros, where I'll wear, I'll take the cloak off. I'll have just this, just the helm, just the legs, and just the paladin. So I'll be at 175. So I go from 200 to 175. So I went down 6%. Like, that's not a huge deal. It's 6%, 7%. I know that the healers are fine with that. I know they can take that. If you drop it down to 150, then you're cutting by like 10%. So you just have to plan for that. But especially, really, a lot of the fire resist you're wearing for Rag is so you don't get knocked back. But if you get knocked back, it's not the end of the world. Especially if you have, sometimes we have 2 tanks, sometimes we have 3. You can taunt Rag. So as long as there's a tank in range that didn't get knocked back, they can taunt. It's not a big deal. On Firemaw, you're only wearing that fire. You're not wearing the fire resist for Shadow Flame. Like even this first fight. Oh no, second fight is where I wore fire resist. Let's look at my damage taken. Most of the damage you're taking is melee. Like 437 damage taken per second. Shadow Flame was 171. Shadow Flame is in bursts. Okay, let's look. I didn't resist any of it. Shadow Flame, I'm not even 100% sure if that's resistible. I think you can resist it up front, and that's, let's see. I think it's an either or with Shadow Flame. It says mitigated 10%, and this one says mitigated 10%, but I wonder if that was like a power word shield. Yeah, I mean, you're just going to get hit by a 4K Shadow Flame is what's going to happen. Yeah, average hit 4K. So this is when I wasn't wearing hardly any fire resist. Average hit 4K on 2 hits. Average hit 4.1 on 2 hits. So, I mean, it really doesn't move the needle. That's probably Shadow anyway, not fire. But 171 damage taken per second. 192 damage taken per second. Flame Buffet, you're wearing it to resist Flame Buffet, but you're doing that so it doesn't continuously stack to the heavens, because it'll keep doing more and more damage as it goes up. melee. I drank Stone Shield on this guy, because he can hit hard. He can thrash. Pretty sure I still Stone Shield. I still use Stone Shield on him. So the fire resist like isn't really what's, and 9 times out of 10, I'll bet you. So if you're a guild that takes 2 minutes to kill Fire Maw, or 2.5 or 3, like whatever, go back and look and see what killed your tank. Was it a thrash? If it was a thrash, then wearing fire resist did nothing. Was it a shadow flame? Fire resist then did nothing. I very seriously doubt there's a lot of tanks that are out there that are dying to flame buffet because they got too many stacks. I just don't think that that's a thing. 9 times out of 10, the times that I see tanks die, or if I die, it's on the pool when you're doing your positioning and the tank got his back turned, or he can't parry or dodge or block or whatever, or he ate a thrash right at the beginning. And like, if you're not sure what thrash is, let's see if we can catch it. So go to events. Let's go melee. So here's a thrash right in the very beginning. Right in the very beginning, he thrashed me. So thrash is not thrash blade. So all of the drakes have this in BWL. So AMS the Hunter looks like, so they list them right here. Ebon Rock, Firemaw, Flame Gore, Gazrinka, and Ghouls. I didn't really know he had that. Halican and Blackrock Spire. It lists all of them that can thrash. The drakes are the ones that everybody knows and remembers that can thrash because they can murder you really quick. So and what it says is gives the caster 2 extra attacks. So basically, and I think it's a chance on hit. It doesn't say it in here. There's no comments. So I don't know what the proc rate is, and I don't know exactly what triggers it. If it's just proc based, like on every 30% of their attacks, so I don't know, whatever. But you can see right here, he attacked me and I dodged, and then he got a thrash because it's 4.6 seconds, 4.8 seconds, 4.8. So I'm very lucky that I dodged 2 of those, and then he crushed me. So imagine if, here's a regular melee. Imagine if it was 1200, 7. So in the same second, basically, it would be 2400 plus another 2. So like 4000. It'd be like basically a Shadow Flame, but in melee form. That's one of the reasons why you need to drink Stone Shield on this guy. And that's why, a lot of people die and they're like, what the heck happened? I took so much damage. Well, he can thrash. All the drakes can. On Firemaw, it's dangerous because he can thrash you right after a Shadow Flame. Like, let's add Shadow Flame back in. Yeah, let's do it this way. So if you had flame, so he flame buffeted me, then I resisted, dodge, crushing, resist, melee, dodge. Let's see if there's. So right here he thrashed me right here. It looks like. But he only thrashed me once. 22-6 and 22-6. So he did a Shadow Flame for almost 4k, and then he meleeed me, and then it but it missed, and then he thrashed. And it only hit me for 875. I probably had Power Word Shield on. Just look how much I mitigated. And then a Flame Buffet, and then a dodge. Right here looks like another thrash. These are 2 melees in the same second. And I probably had another Power Word Shield because I mitigated a ton of it. Or is that just my armor, maybe? Maybe that's my armor, because I probably had inspiration. So yeah, if I was a betting person, which under the certain circumstances I am, I would bet that your tank, or if you're a tank and you're watching this, that you are dying on Firemaw to thrashes or Shadow Flames and then a thrash, not Flame Buffet. Like, it takes a while for, like, I mean, Flame Buffet, I don't see what my stacks are right here, but let's see on my, was this my parse one? I think it was. Dang it. Yeah, so this is when I got a 98 on him. So this is the one where I'm wearing hardly, what was I wearing? 181 fire resist, which is probably still too much. Oh no, I think I had the neck on, but let's say 181. Damage taken. So even then, Flame Buffet still only did 116 damage per second. So near the end, oh here, Flame Buffet for 1,000. So it only built up to 1,000. So it's right around a rough, right around a melee attack. So his melee. Whoops. Back to tables. Whoop, that's not what I wanted either. So his melee average hit 1.3k. Yeah, so right at the end, Flame Buffet was starting to ramp up on me after 40 seconds. Yeah, right here it's up to 427, 949, and then I resisted 2 in a row. And then that's it. I didn't get any more. So yeah, I would say if you're killing fire, it's again 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes long. Probably need to wear a little bit more fire resist than what I'm wearing here. Probably more like this other one where I'm wearing, 303. Because it is nice to have those stacks fall off. And that's another thing that you can do, especially on Fire Maul. Like if you don't have the fire resist, let's say you're progressing on Fire Maul. Let's watch this. Oops, shit. Let's go to the replay and watch the replay. Okay, so what we do is, so this is where this is the next room where Ebon Rock is. Ebon Rock is up here and Flame Gore's over here. We just came. Broodlord room is right here. Okay, this is the suppression room, lower floor. Then you go around the ramp. This is the suppression room, upper floor, and here's where Broodlord is. So Fire Maul pats. He pats. He comes up in the room. He turns around. He goes up the ramp. He goes in here. He turns around. He comes back. So we'll put a hunter trap out, and he'll run over the hunter trap, and that's how he gets pulled. So you'll slowly, and we do the door strat. So I tank him right here in the door, and I have tank healers are on this side of the wall out, and I'm going to be standing right here. Fire Maul is right here, so I'm in line of sight of him, but the healers are not. And then the DPS and the other healers are all standing, and all the ranged are back here. And then we have off tanks here. What happens is when he's about to cast Wing Buffet, or Wing Buffet, I say buffet because I like food. When he's about to cast that, then the tanks, when it's about, say, 10 seconds before he's about to cast it, the two off tanks will both run in right here. They'll both taunt at the same time in case one of them fails. Then Fire Maul will turn. Instead of facing this direction, he now faces this direction. He will wing buffet them against the wall. Then he turns back to me because they lose their threat from Wing Buffet. Then they run back around to the corner. So we're going to watch that happen. Here I am. There's the hunter. I taunt. I grab him. Okay, and I'm walking backwards. I'm probably casting Last Stand. No, I didn't have Last Stand, but so right here, there's the melee. Here, the tanks will come in here in just a second. You can see his, okay, so you can see his health going down. So right here, when tank has come in to taunt, so I'm going to select Fire Maul. You'll see him switch from me to the off tank. I'm going to slow this down too. Let's slow this down. It's going way too fast. Okay, right there, you see he got the taunt debuff. He turned to face this tank. So right now, I'm just white attacking so I don't pull aggro. Because Wing Buffet will knock you back, and it also reduces your threat by, I think, 25% or 50%. You don't want that to hit the main tank, and you'll see it cast here in a second. Okay, the DPS are still going ham on him. There he goes, Wing Buffet. He's casting it. Cast. Bam. Then he turns back to me. Okay, so he's targeting me. Even though this has not updated, he's targeting me. And then that's probably the only Wing Buffet he's going to get off, because he dies before that happens. He's down to 30%. They're about to execute him. So everybody is just pumping. Shadow Flame. See, my health really hasn't moved. There we go. Bam, 50%, right back up. So what you can do, and some guilds do the same strategy, they just put it in this doorway instead. They have the main tank will stand in this door and the off tanks will stand here. Either way, because Fire Maul is tauntable, what you can do is, let's say you're progressing in Blackwing Lair, and you don't have the Dark Iron, or you don't have the resources, whatever the case may be, or you've got a Feral, and your main tank doesn't have, because ideally when you're progressing you probably want 315 fire resist, and then you just start dropping that over time as your DPS get more gear. Getting these enchants for the helm and the legs kind of sucks. Like you get them in BRD, but it kind of does suck a little bit to farm. It's not super difficult. UBRS buff is huge. We're a Nax guild and we still go get the UBRS buff. It's super simple. You can get to the mobs really quickly. We just start buffing. While Warlocks are summoning people, we go in and start clearing the first few trash packs of UBRS, and it's outside of UBRS. You would go into the instance, but it's outside the instance. It's technically in LBRS, I think. And then you get the buff and you go inside BWO and then you log out. And then you the buff lasts for an hour. So you have more and then you have that extra fire resist for Veil, which can help out. But let's say you don't have, let's say you, for whatever, I don't know, whatever reason, you don't have the helm, you don't have the legs. You've only got 211. That's probably, if you're progressing through Blackwing Lair, that's probably not enough. But let's say you've got 3 or 4 tanks that all have 211. Because they've got the cloak from Onyxia, they've got tier 1 gloves, they've got the Onyxia neck. You got paladins, right? Well then, here's what you do. You have your main tank either do what I'm doing or do this door strat here. What doesn't really matter, whichever one you want to do. And you have them stand here, okay? You have your off tank over here who's also got 200 something fire resist. So you can either roll the dice and just say you're going to tank until you take too many stacks and you die. That's one way of doing it. Or you can say when Wing Buffet is going to be cast, we're going to let that tank get punted across the room and the 2 off tanks run in and taunt, and whoever ends up with the boss runs to the main tank position. Then the main tank who got punted across the room comes back and hides, or comes over here by the healers and hides and drops their stacks. Then when they drop their stacks, they can come in and take over for the next person. That is a strat you could do in lieu of having, enough fire resist. Like, it's a little more complicated than what we're doing here, and there's room for error. But you don't need as much fire resist to do it that way. Ideally, though, progressing, you will want a ton of fire resist for Fire Maul, because when you're progressing, like I said, you're going to be killing him in 2 or 3 minutes. It's going to take a while. Like, in fact, we could go back and look. I don't know why that keeps playing. Let's go back and look at all my Fire Maul parses and see. Go away. So like right here, 2 minutes and 40. I was a DPS on that fight. Minute and a half, minute 40, minute 40, minute 30. 247. I don't even remember what guild that was with. That was from March. That might have been a scuffed pool, maybe. 242, 235, 234. So you can see that obviously the best parses are going to be the short duration fights. But like even this one right here was 2 minutes. I wasn't tanking. Let's find one where I was tanking for like 2 minutes. 146. Let's look at this one. So this was, when was this? May. Okay. How many people do we have? $26 people. I honestly don't remember this raid. I don't remember why. Why do we only have 26 people? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, it's 35. Sorry, it didn't have the healers. 35. So we're still 5 short. That might be why. But let's see what this one looks like. So let's see what I was wearing. Probably the same stuff. Yep, Dark Iron Helm. Nixia neck. Ooh, I was wearing breastplate of Chromatic Flight back then. So the breastplate of Chromatic Flight is not easy to get, but it is, for Fury Prot, it is the best fire resist chest that is out there. It's really good. It's only 15 fire resist. Kind of sucks that it's only 15, but especially for how hard it is to get. It's only hard to get because of the drop. To get the drop off the beast. Dark Iron legs. Cloak. I did not have the trinket on. I did not have Thunder Fury. I had Widow's Remorse and THC. So let's see my damage take. So let's. Oh, you know what? Sorry. Buffs. Let's see. Resist fire and fire resist aura. Okay. I did not have world buffs. That's interesting. Okay, so let's go back. So Dark Iron Helm. So we'll use this one. So that was what, 55? 35 plus 20. So the neck was 10. Chest was another 15. Legs, 50. Right, yep. Legs. Did not have the gloves on, so nothing for gloves. Cloak, 31. Then the palette, then the UBRS buff, then the chest. So I was at 311. I was very close to cap. And it was a 2-minute fight. And look at Flame Buffet. It was almost 2 minutes. So I mitigated as much as I possibly could have, basically. So the average hit was only 251. So yeah, if you're, and again, like, you could probably wear less than that on a 2-minute fight and be fine. Like, if I had gone back and looked at logs back then the way that I do now and analyzed myself, I probably would say, you know what, I don't, and at some point I did, and I said, I don't need this chest anymore. The 15 really isn't worth it. The neck, you know, depending on if you need the hit or not, the neck is probably not worth it. You need to have the cloak. So if you're doing it for, you know, if you're doing a 2-minute fight, you know, helm, legs, cloak, pally buff, UBRS buff, you're still at 286. So you're going from 75% to probably what, 286 would be what, 70, probably 68%, somewhere in there. That's probably still good enough to keep Flame Buffet off of you enough to where it's not stacking up forever. So to answer the question, how much resist do you need? You know, it depends. In my opinion, I think right around 200 buffed is probably what I would look at, depending on your healers, depending on your DPS, because then you're mitigating roughly 50%. Fire Maul is probably, you know, an exception to the rule, and Saffron is probably an exception to the rule. It depends on if you have world buffs, and if your healers have world buffs on Saffron, this is a very difficult fight. But you also don't want to gimp your DPS so much. As a tank, you don't need any on Saffron. But as a DPS, you don't want to gimp yourself so much. So, right around the 200 mark is probably, a good rule of thumb. And then you go back and look at your logs and see, if you died on Saffron, maybe you need to wear a little bit more. Maybe the healers died too much and when you wearing more wouldn't have had any effect at all. Really the answer to a lot of these questions, what should I be wearing as a tank? How much mitigation should I wear? How much resistance should I wear? How much this? How much that? A lot of it is going to depend on your guild and their gear and your gear. Getting good at Warcraft logs and being able to analyze like what happened to me. Like if you look at this meter, I would say shadow resistance is probably more important than fire, but that's only from the aspect of looking at these three. Like melee obviously did the most damage, and then shadow was second. Why are you wearing fire resist? Well, the reason you're wearing fire resist is that the more flame buffet stacks up, the more damage it does. So you need to have resists somewhere there in between where you're not getting it stacked to 10 in 20 seconds. You need to have a couple stacks and then a resist, and a couple stacks and then a resist, or 3 resists in a row and then a stack and then another stack and then 3 resists in a row, something like that. I don't even think Shadow Flame can be resisted. I'm not 100% sure. But obviously nobody wears Shadow Resistance to try to negate Shadow Flame. You don't do that. Shadow Flame has a cast time, and the healers can see it when it's coming, and they should be bubbling you and loading up a heal, so that you're healed instantly. Melee by far is the most, other than Flame Buffet stacking up, melee is the scariest thing about Fire Maul, and really the other Drakes as well. You don't wear Fire Resist on Ebonrock because he doesn't have Flame Buffet, but like look at the melee, his melee damage. Wing Buffet, I shouldn't have even been hit by that, but and then Flame Gore does fire damage too with Fire Nova, but you don't put on Fire Resist for that. If Fire Nova did a stacking debuff, you probably would, but it doesn't. Again, his Shadow Flame, it does more damage than that. So yeah, very important to understand. Like you can easily figure this. This is the same for everybody. It really has nothing to do with your level. It has to do with your resistance, and then your the target, which is in this case a boss. If this is not a boss, like let's say for whatever reason you want to figure out how to gear up against level 60 mob to resist their stuff. 300 is the cap. So right, 75% is the cap. You can't go over 75%. Or at least as far as the resistance goes, you don't get any more benefit. It's possible through the law of averages for you to average higher than 75%, but it's not because you hit 400 resistance. That's not the reason why. So you would just modify that. Okay. I've got a couple other ideas for videos coming. If anyone would like to see anything specific, let me know. I'm probably going to do some boss specific videos here in the near future. Probably starting with Nax and working my way backwards. And those will just be more or less, what to look out for, what gear to wear. I'm still not BIS. I don't have full BIS gear yet. But it's probably, the reason why I want to do some of these videos now is because I don't have full BIS yet, and I can show other options that work. Like for example, wearing tier 1 gloves and Nax. You might not think you do that, but you absolutely can. There's not a ton of gear of free Prot gloves out there, and Goas are hard to get. Gauntlets of Annihilation from Cthulhu. Unless your guild is prioritizing you over the other warriors, they're very difficult to get. But I'll probably do some of those types of videos and just run through kind of each boss and which ones are scary, why they're scary, what you can do to reduce that. Patchwork is, I think, highly misunderstood. I think a lot of people that are main tanks, I think, wear too much mitigation, and I've seen tanks wear shields on him when I don't necessarily think that's a great play. There's bosses that like Grobulus is one that can wipe your raid if you're not paying attention, and I think people don't take him seriously enough. But I'll end up doing some videos on those. Like I said, if anybody has any requests or any ideas or any thoughts, whatever, just post them in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video.